Have you ever wondered what it would be like if a volcano didn't just explode in a massive fireball, but instead slowly poisoned the skies, triggering famines and freezing winters halfway around the world? That's exactly what happened in 1783 with Iceland's Laki eruption, a sneaky, drawn-out disaster that changed history without the drama of a single Big Bang. Now, picture something similar brewing under America's most famous volcano, Yellowstone. Could its so-called minor eruptions hint at a Laki-like future? Let's dive in and explore this wild possibility. First off, let's travel back to 1783 in Iceland. The Laki fissure, a long crack in the earth, didn't erupt like Mount St. Helens with a huge ash cloud. Instead, it oozed lava and gases for 8 long months, like a leaky faucet that wouldn't stop dripping poison. This wasn't your typical volcano. It was a basaltic flood, spewing out about 122 million tons of sulfur dioxide gas. That's enough to fill over 1 billion hot air balloons. The gas mixed with the atmosphere, creating a hazy, dry fog that blanketed Europe. People described the sun turning blood red at noon, and a sulfuric stench hanging in the air like rotten eggs. The real kicker? This fog didn't just look eerie, it wrecked the climate. In Europe, the summer of 1783 was bizarrely hot in some spots, but then came one of the harshest winters on record. Rivers froze solid, crops failed, and livestock dropped dead from poisoned grass. In Iceland, it was apocalyptic. Toxic fluorine from the eruption contaminated the soil, killing half the island's cattle and sheep. About a quarter of Iceland's human population, over 9,000 people, perished from famine and disease. The effects rippled out. Poor harvests in France contributed to bread shortages that helped spark the French Revolution a few years later. Even Ben Franklin, tinkering away in Paris as America's ambassador, noticed the weird weather and linked it to the Icelandic volcano in his writings. Fun fact: Franklin called it a universal fog, and it's one of the first recorded connections between volcanoes and global climate change. Now, fast forward to today and shift your gaze to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, right here in the good old USA. Yellowstone is a beast of a volcano, a supervolcano to be precise. It's famous for its potential to unleash a cataclysmic super eruption like the one 640,000 years ago that blanketed half the continent in ash. But that's not what we're talking about here. The title mentions minor eruptions, and Yellowstone has plenty of those bubbling under the surface, literally. These aren't lava-spewing events. They're hydrothermal explosions, powered by the park's massive underground hot water system. Think of Yellowstone as a giant pressure cooker. Beneath the ground, superheated water mixes with magma-heated rocks, building up steam until, bam, it blasts through the surface. Just last year, in July 2024, a hydrothermal explosion rocked Biscuit Basin. Tourists were strolling the boardwalks when Black Diamond Pool suddenly hurled boiling mud, rocks, and steam hundreds of feet into the air. No one was hurt, but it destroyed parts of the walkway and scattered debris like confetti at a chaotic party. Scientists say these blasts happen a few times a year, though most are tiny, creating craters just a few feet wide. Back in 1989, a similar one at Pork Chop Geyser shot water 100 feet high, and historical records show dozens over the centuries. But here's where it gets interesting. These minor events aren't just fireworks shows. They release gases too, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide from the hydrothermal vents. Yellowstone is already one of the biggest natural CO2 emitters on the planet, pumping out about 45,000 tons a day. That's like the exhaust from 1 million cars. While not as dramatic as Laki's belch, imagine if a series of these explosions or a shift in activity ramped up the gas output. Could it mimic Laki's climate chaos? To understand that, let's break down the science like we're chatting over coffee. Volcanoes affect climate through aerosols, tiny particles that reflect sunlight back to space, cooling the Earth. Laki's sulfur dioxide turned into sulfuric acid droplets in the atmosphere, creating a veil that lowered temperatures by up to 3 degrees Celsius in parts of the northern hemisphere. It was like throwing a giant shade over the planet. Yellowstone's magma is different. It's rhyolitic, thicker and stickier than Laki's runny basalt. So its eruptions tend to be more explosive. But Yellowstone has had smaller lava flows in the past, like the Pitchstone Plateau flow 70,000 years ago, which oozed out without a superblast. What if Yellowstone entered a phase of prolonged, Laki-style fissure activity? Picture cracks opening up, lava seeping out slowly over months, and gases venting steadily. It's not impossible. Yellowstone's caldera is riddled with faults that could act like fissures. A 2019 study modeled something similar and found that even a moderate eruption could release enough sulfur to cause short-term cooling, much like Laki. Analogies help here. Think of Laki as a smoker puffing out a constant stream of toxic cigs, while a big Yellowstone blowout would be like a bomb. But minor eruptions? They're like second-hand smoke. Subtle, but if it builds up, it could sting. Real-world examples abound. Take the 2018 Kilauea eruption in Hawaii. It was fissure-based, lasted months, and released tons of sulfur dioxide, causing volcanic smog, that affected air quality across the Pacific. Not as global as Laki, but a taste of what prolonged gas release can do. Closer to home, Yellowstone's ongoing activity already influences local weather. The park's geysers and fumaroles create microclimates, warming the ground in winter and even melting snow in spots. Building on that, scientists are watching Yellowstone like hawks. The Yellowstone Volcano Observatory uses seismographs, GPS, and gas sensors to monitor every rumble. In April 2024, they detected a small explosion in Norris Geyser Basin using infrasound, low-frequency waves that travel far. It's like having Earth's stethoscope pressed to the ground. Fun fact: Yellowstone has over 10,000 hydrothermal features, more than anywhere else on Earth, thanks to its hotspot, a plume of hot mantle rock rising like a slow elevator from deep below. But could these minor bursts foreshadow a Laki-like scenario? The odds of a full-blown volcanic eruption soon are low, about 1 in 730,000 per year for a super one. Smaller ones, more plausible. If a fissure opened and vented gases for months, the effects might not be apocalyptic, but they could be felt. Sulfur haze could dim the sun, leading to cooler summers and harsher winters in the US and Europe. Crop yields might dip, echoing Laki's famines. In our modern world, that could mean higher food prices, respiratory issues from polluted air, and even disruptions to air travel, like the 2010 Eyjafjallajökull ash cloud that grounded planes. Don't panic, though. This is speculative. Yellowstone's last lava flow was 70,000 years ago, and hydrothermal explosions are more nuisance than nightmare. But they remind us how interconnected our planet is. One volcano in Iceland altered history. What could America's supervolcano do if it gets gassy? As we wrap this up, consider this. Earth's volcanoes are like sleeping giants, occasionally snoring with minor rumbles that hint at their power. Yellowstone's minor eruptions aren't harbingers of doom, but they could whisper warnings of a Laki-like haze in our future. Stay curious, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe the next big story will come from right under our feet. What do you think? Ready to visit Yellowstone and feel the ground tremble?